Call this meeting to order. It's Monday, August 3rd, 2015. Call the meeting to order. Let's approve the minutes of July 30th.
I apologize, we don't have them yet.
That'll be easy.
The meeting was Thursday, they're not done yet. So.
Well, the fact that there's 165 comments here might have something to do with
I was
that.
hoping that they would be done, but
They're not. Okay.
okay. Next one.
Yeah, let's table that motion. Any announcements?
I have a couple announcements. So Brandy is coming. She got stuck in torrential downpours in the Springfield area and traffic was moving slow, so just running a little bit late. The second announcement is we were notified last week that West Brattleboro Village Center did get their Village Center designation from the state.
Oh, great, great.
Our efforts to update the town plan and all
And have you let them know? Are they happy with that?
No.
The residents, the citizens of West Brattleboro.
Yeah. And then
I actually did let Michael know.
the other announcement is if anybody's around on Wednesday at 1 o'clock and you want to take a walk down to the green space that's across from Whetstone Station on Depot Street, the EPA will be giving the town of Brattleboro a big check for the brownfields funding. So
Oh, great.
One of those giant checks?
One of the giant.
How big?
Really big, $400,000 big.
Yeah.
Will they be filming it? Will be told?
Yeah, I think BCTV is going to be there. So there's going to, all the Vermont announcements from the EPA will be made there. And then the state also had some brownfield kind of state level grants that they were giving out. Or technical assistance. No, none of the federal delegation will be there. I think there might be some state secretaries, not the governor.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, organizational meeting. Let's elect a chair, a vice chair, and a clerk.
So are we in some sort of violation since we didn't do this the first meeting of July? Can I?
Three monkeys.
I'll send myself a 30-day letter of intent and then.
The first meeting in July, I think we only had 4 people here, so
okay.
we decided not to.
Do it.
Sounds confusing.
Yeah.
Okay.
We decided not to do it, and then the
Good
second
answer.
meeting in July was kind of a special, not a regular meeting. So we.
Yay! Awesome. Okay.
So we're just going to do it now.
Okay, sure.
Try not to, and try not to attract too much attention.
I'm not very good at that. You might have
It's
noticed.
okay. That's what I like.
Yeah, pivoting is a specialty.
I know.
All right, so
How do we do this?
I nominate Elizabeth McLaughlin for chair.
I
I
second.
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 You don't need a second.
Okay.
All right.
You don't need a second.
Anyone else?
Don't jump up.
Yes, I know. One of the Robert's rules that people always violate.
What?
You don't need to second a nomination.
Oh,
right.
But
All right,
since it's not a big deal, no one ever calls somebody on it. But I'm taking a stand.
I think that's a great platform.
Yeah.
Keep that up. I think it's what dignifies you.
all right. Should we want to do this piece by piece, or do you want to get a slate and vote for them?
Let's get a slate. That sounds exciting.
Okay.
Well, the only thing is if you have multiple people for something, it would muddy the water for just
that's true.
naming you.
All right.
Well, yeah.
Vote it down. Vote it one after another. is
I
what
mean,
I
I'll do it. I'm
All
just suggesting for
Okay.
efficiency.
All right, then have no other nominations. Let's vote on the chair. All in favor of me?
Are you abstaining? Or are you voting for?
I'll vote for myself.
New Jersey, come on.
Yeah, my mother always told me, if you don't vote for yourself, how do you expect
No,
other
you're right.
people to?
Okay, good.
Okay, vice chair. Do we have any nominations? I will nominate James Valente.
I would
for
second
vice
it, but
chair.
I'm not allowed to.
Thank you.
Oh, wow.
That counts.
Very good.
Anyone else like to be nominated? Okay. Then let's vote on vice chair. All in favor of James Valente being chair, vice
Aye.
chair?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. It's unanimous.
Okay.
And a clerk. We need a clerk.
So the clerk is kind of
An honorary position.
an honorary position because we do minutes and do postings and that kind of thing.
Can you
On
be
the
the
list,
Would
clerk?
you,
I think you should be the clerk because you have the most seniority. Of the people who do not yet have office.
Oh, I don't know if I would take that. Quite
Wait,
so.
but first, can you be the
If
clerk?
I was
can
you,
I be the clerk?
can I be your advisor?
I don't know.
No.
Can staff
No,
be the
a
clerk?
member
No.
of the commission has to be the clerk.
All right.
An appointed official.
That's how I ended up chair as the listers.
Who was the?
It's not a very
was
stressful
it-
position.
It was Carolina,
Carolina.
who won't be here tonight.
Right. She's obviously been worn out.
Shall we
so-
strip her of her duties?
Yeah, said like that, I think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
I nominate Kathy Orfanois. What? Did I say it
This is
wrong?
Kathy Erfer.
Just Kathy
Yeah.
I
Orfanois,
was gonna say, I
sorry.
don't know who that is.
Sorry,
No, that's fine.
it's because I always see Caroline.
Right. They are combined in their names.
That's what we did too.
Okay.
Very complicated.
All in favor of Kathy Ofer being the clerk?
Right?
Aye. Also unanimous.
That was a tough one.
How very nice. All right.
Well,
All right.
So now is when they pile on with what the job.
So you'll tell me if I have to do something, right?
yeah, we're going to change the whole thing
You
now.
will never have to do anything.
Yeah.
You'll be fine.
No. We'll get
Just
us to
get the
do
glory
recycling
without
room.
any of the
Okay,
work.
minutes. You gotta work on the minutes.
Work on the minutes.
All right, I got a pencil.
You have to turn on the recorder.
Yeah. Your new job is gonna be to record because I
Actually get the recorded.
Does someone actually type this out? They listen to the recording? and-
Yeah. That's
Is it
really-
you?
Or they take my notes.
It's our
Sometimes.
tax dollars at work.
Sometimes.
Sometimes it's reader.
Sometimes
it's
it's
even me.
complicated. Okay, review bylaws. So have they changed since the last year?
They have not. They have not changed.
Was there something in here that we were thinking that we would want to change?
We changed it last
We
time.
changed it last time, didn't
What was it? Does the meeting have the first Monday?
we? Yeah.
Yes, it has the first Monday.
Okay. What we added the last time had to do with attendance.
That's right.
Section 11 was something that got added, I think, in,
Oh, yeah, because we had some poor
Yeah.
attendance.
But we were over that now, which is
Yes,
good.
we are.
Pretty good.
Lovely new members.
May I make a question?
sure.
Submit a question, which is just the time. I don't know, for other people, 6 o'clock is hard. Is there any possibility
Meaning
of moving to
it's like-
6:30?
Oh.
Like, it's just hard to like coordinate with like, getting the parental exchange and stuff.
You want to push it later to 6:30?
That would be
Yeah.
my preferred time, but if it's, I can also manage, I'm just occasionally gonna be 5 minutes late. It's not a big deal, but I just wanted to throw that out there in case other people were. of the same
6:05.
Well, I'm just concerned that just makes a longer day for staff.
That
so
makes sense.
I'd be content to have you be a little bit late.
That's fine with me? Okay, cool. So far, I've had a
Or
pretty
bring
good
your,
track record.
bring your children.
We usually start 5 minutes late.
Yeah, so I wouldn't sweat
I won't
it.
get a demerit if I show up 5 minutes later.
No, you don't.
Awesome, okay.
So,
Then-
I wouldn't even necessarily drive or pedal faster to make it just get here. That's good.
And is this conflict of interest language from the town charter?
Oh, God, I hope
I think it is, because I think I helped craft.
I do not know if it's,
What's the question?
I don't know, when
What's
we
the
did
conflict
when
of
the
interest
town meeting members
for
did the
the
town
town?
charter like a couple of years ago, I had a hissy fit because because the conflict of interest language was absurd.
Yeah.
And so we recrafted and when I read it, I was like, this is very familiar.
Is it familiar and absurd or just?
No, it's familiar and quite comprehensive compared to what used to be there, which was one sentence that said,
If you feel like it could be a conflict, you should say to the person next to you,
maybe I have a conflict, like
I'm feeling,
whisper it
I'm
under your
feeling
breath.
conflicted. And that would be
I was
the-
horrified, coming from New Jersey, whatever.
Right.
Anyway, no, it's fine.
Right.
Okay, everyone here
It
who's
was
from New
a small
Jersey
town
and is
conflict of
horrified,
interest.
please raise your hand.
Is your car washed?
Very. My apologies.
do you need a minute
You okay?
to take a
You
deep breath?
Good.
Recuperate?
I hate driving in that kind of weather.
Oh, yeah, I had to pull over last time, it was raining. Okay, what do we have to do for open meeting law?
This is just something that
I'll be right back.
the town manager secretary had asked me to talk to the different boards and commissions about. So we are subject to open meeting law. Generally, like when minutes come out and how meetings are warned and stuff is everything we handle, so I don't have to bog you down with those details. But I thought there were a couple of things that I would point out. So a quorum of the board is 4. So if you're in some social setting, if you're in a grocery store and 4 of you happen to run into each other, you cannot talk about commission business. So you couldn't be in there talking about zoning. You can say, hey, is there a meeting on Monday night? You know, like that kind of thing can happen, but you can't talk planning commission business because otherwise we'd have to warn it as a public meeting.
And so if we were all at the same dinner party, we just couldn't talk.
That's it.
And the whole board is us and Carolina's. There's 7.
There's 7.
Right? And are there 7 seats?
Yes, there's 7 seats. So that makes, the quorum is 4. If 4 of you are together talking about planning commission business, that's a meeting, and it would need to be warned.
Is the quorum, so if the full board is not like full, like say there's only 5 people on the board, is the quorum then 3?
No, it's still 4.
It's still 4.
Yep.
Okay.
And then the other thing is email communications. So if I email you something, it's best practice to not reply all. You should just reply back to me because you could get into a situation where we start discussing planning commission business.
We
and
can
that's
be
also-
a quorum by
Maybe for
email.
scheduling.
For scheduling, it's fine. I can say, can you guys meet on this date? You can reply all, whatever, that's okay. It's kind of the same thing as the discussions. And then the other one, I can't remember, probably wasn't important. Oh, meetings. If somebody cannot attend the meeting but can Skype in or come in by phone, that is allowed. The only thing is you would have to identify yourselves and yourself on the phone, and if you're voting, you would have to say, Sue, yes, I vote in favor, or something like that. You just have to be very clear. But meetings over electronic means
Okay.
you can attend, and we can have a quorum in that way. So 3 can be here and 1 can be calling in. Yep. Okay. So those are the 3 things I wanted to.
Okay. Actually, yeah, the
Okay.
Skyping thing, we haven't.
Canada, you can Skype.
Yeah, I don't think you've got an excuse now.
Out of the
I don't know if I'll
country,
be able to. I'll be on
Skype.
the, it depends if I have Wi-Fi or not.
Just kidding.
I don't know if they have that in Canada yet.
They're probably better than we are.
It's Skype, eh?
I worked on Pompton zoning, and they had a planning commission member who I think may have only attended by speakerphone, because the entire time I was there, he never was there in person.
Oh, did you get like Charlie's Angels?
I
didn't actually live there. Maybe he lived somewhere.
Yeah, right. How'd you
Yeah.
verify
Just had
this?
a real interest.
That's pretty funny.
Alrighty,
Okay.
so let's begin our land use regulation work session.
Do-do-do-do. So you.
Okay.
There's a very cute old movie called The Major and the Minor.
Major and minor. So, Brandy, I thought the first thing we'd talk about, although they didn't receive it in advance,
Okay.
so if you want to do that, you could take one and pass it.
I got one. I think I do have one.
Oh, I do give you one.
And you've got one. I hope.
Part of the
I do.
quarters.
You wrote it. Right?
I read it and I pressed print before I left, so that was
That's
good.
great. Very sophisticated. Hey, where did you get this from? Where are you?
I'm still, my printer is still in Port Henry.
No.
These are extras. Oops, sorry, my.
So do you want to
Yes,
walk
introduce
through it
this. Okay. So, 434A that's not a change from the draft. Basically what site plan review applies to. There's a list of some things it does not apply to. Single family, 2-family, and related development. The things that are exempted under the exemptions back in the first part of the regulations, temporary things. And then we had a provision in here for some of the urban center
Rumpelstiltskin.
activities. Oh, it's followed me. I've been
Was it
looking
the
at
entire way?
Oh, I from Heartland on, I was running because I had my truck. I bought a house in Heartland over the weekend, so I had a
All right. Congratulations.
It can happen to all any of us.
my truck had a whole load of stop, and it was
Oh,
like
yeah.
thundering, and I'm like running, like trying to unload this because I thought it's gonna pour any second, and I got it unloaded, got it back in the truck, it poured, and then all the way
Congratulations. Good.
south of like Bellows Falls, it poured, and then I've been like jumping it back and forth
Oh.
the rest of the way down, so it was fun.
And sorry, but have you been to the Skunk Hollow Tavern?
Not yet, but everyone says I should definitely
Yes,
go.
you should definitely go.
Skunk Hollow?
Oh my God,
In
it's
Heartland?
great. In Heartland, Four Corners.
Yes.
Apparently, it's a major local attraction because it's been mentioned by multiple people.
Anyway.
Four Corners is fun, actually.
So, this applicability section remains the same. Application remains the same. So what changes as we get down here to classification, so we have two types of site plan review applications, major and minor. The major is essentially the same process that you're using now. They would go to the Development Review Board. The minor site plan applications would be an administrative process. One of the benefits of having the more specific standards in Part 3 of the regulations is that the smaller projects, it's much easier to determine whether they meet or don't meet the standards. And so less of a need to send every site plan to the Development Review Board.
Is structural changes defined?
Did you, page
Oh, I
3?
didn't do page 3. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
well, I will read it out loud.
I can go make copies. I
I'm
apologize.
happy to just listen to it.
Yeah.
I mean, unless people disagree.
So we did discuss this briefly at last week's meeting, the discussion of what substantial renovation means. And you had some questions about the definition, my working definition at that point. So I have made it a little, beefed it up a little bit. So what would trigger a major project, the one that you're asking about here would be the substantial renovation. So the definition I've got going means modification of an existing building to such an extent that the building or a portion of it cannot be used for its intended purpose while the work is in progress and includes at least one of the following. So this is where I made it more specific. A structural change to the foundation, roof, floor, or load-bearing walls. An increase in floor area by more than 2,000 square feet. That maybe should be more than 2,000 square feet. But always helps when you read out, you're writing out
Out
loud. Or a substantial improvement. And we actually had a definition of substantial improvement that's similar to the flood regulations. That's a 50%
50% rule.
rule. So if you invest, and that's over a 5-year period, more than 50% of the market value in the building.
I'm
to
sorry, can
improve
you
it.
just, yeah, so a substantial improvement is you invest more than 50%.
So yes, modifications that have a cumulative cost of 50% or more over a 5-year period.
Okay.
I think.
Are the,
Oh, sorry.
are the notification procedures different for major and minor?
Yes, so the administrative review process would be very much like the zoning permit. Neighbors would not get notice, there would not be a hearing. There would be the zoning permit, it would be posted, and that would be the process.
Can I ask a question?
Mhm.
What is a structural change to the roof involved? Would that be like changing the roofing material, or does that mean changing like the roof line?
That
does
would
that
be
mean?
actually changing, not putting
Like-
different shingles on it, actually changing, adding a dormer would be a structural change, potentially changing the angle of the roof.
So if somebody
Tearing
wanted
out
to
a wall,
add a,
throwing steel at it,
so
something
I
like
just,
that.
I just want to clarify, so if somebody just wanted to add a dormer on their house, they would have to
No.
go through.
Not for a house.
Not for a
His
house.
house is-
Not for
exempt.
1 or 2 family home.
Okay.
Because those are exempt
They're
from site
exempt,
plan
right.
review. They would need a zoning permit. but
Got
they
it.
would-
Did you say if you changed material, you would need a permit?
No.
No, you would not. Okay.
So if you go from
I think I misheard.
gray to green shingles, that's not going to trigger.
But like shingles to standing seam.
No. But if you change the
Changing the
roof
line.
line or you
Yeah.
have to reinforce
Okay.
the structure of the roof because you're doing something else with the building,
Right.
then yes.
I wonder if it might make sense to take out the piece of the definition about load-bearing walls. Because I think a lot of people do pretty minor renovations that include, replacing a load-bearing wall with a beam to open it up, say that are really not that substantial.
How about exterior walls?
I think that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, most people with older buildings would encounter a load-bearing wall that they might want to modify.
Yeah.
Well, not most, but a lot of people want to modify that, and
I mean, all these houses are so chopped up, I wish I
Right.
could get rid of some of my load-bearing walls.
right. Yeah, no,
Steel in it.
seriously.
So
But yours-
I want to clarify about, so a single-family house that's being used for a business would still be considered a single-family house?
It depends
Yeah.
on how
So-
it's being used for business. If it was if the business use was
If it was like a
permitted and it was like a
conditional-
home occupation, those don't come through your site plan review.
That's
home occupation. But if it's bigger scale than that, then
Right,
it,
like a conditional use.
right, then it
So
does.
I just want to clarify, so if one wanted to add a dormer to a single-family home that's being used as a business, they would need to do a parking, have all, like, it would trigger all those things. They need to have a landscape architect come in and stuff like that, even if they're just adding a dormer or doing something like that, that has nothing to do with the exterior landscaping.
as this is set up and what those trigger points were, I would say yes. Although what's there may meet the requirements, in which case it's, not.
I guess I just wonder if there's a way to sort of have only the relevant stuff be required. Like and I don't know how that could be languaged, but it just seems excessive to require, like if somebody is doing something like adding a dormer to require a parking, like having a parking engineer or a traffic engineer do a review, like when if something is getting done that has nothing to do with some of these various requirements, that it's not relevant.
I don't think you'd necessarily have to hire the professional, but I think that those things, if they were violations that were essentially just grandfathered in, it would trigger
I guess
a
it's
review of those violations.
So it's sort of reviewing the
Um,
site plan. It's just an opportunity in some ways to say, there's something happening that's significant that's on this property, so now here's a chance for us to check and make sure all the zoning stuff is up
That's
to
the way I
par.
read it.
Yeah, and also, each one of those things is a potential to enlarge, if not, the building or the intensity of the use.
Right, and the
that's-
traffic and all of that.
That's what triggers it all, because
And or change the use.
Right,
So
okay,
without wanting to dwell on this
yeah, I got that.
too much, I think the burden on 1 and 2 family dwellings, homes that are used as homes is remarkably low. I think the question comes here mostly to do with older homes that have been repurposed for other uses apart from a residential use, number one. And then number two is probably even more pertinent, which is pre-existing commercial buildings that may occur in a mixed-use district or another district
Right.
for reasons to do with modifications that can dramatically change the vehicular traffic and therefore circulation on site and a bunch of other factors. And so I don't think this necessarily requires an applicant or an owner or a property owner to go through the entire review process as if it's never been done before. But I think it's the obligation is upon them to demonstrate, actually, I'm finishing an existing attic room and I want to use that as a small office, and so I am going to put a dormer in, but I'm not proposing to add staff to my
Right.
converted 3-bedroom home and add more people working there and add more traffic coming to the site. I'm just changing things around.
So, but with this, the way it's written with the roof changing, if the roof changes though, is it required then to go through the major site approval? Or could somebody, like you're saying, argue, you know what, this is a minor thing, even though the roof is changing, can we go through the minor process? So I guess that's the place where I'm wondering, is there room in this?
I think
the way
it
it's
triggers a
written?
review before the DOB, which would make it major rather than minor. And then I think that the obligation again is on the applicant, and if they're showing no change, then it's a relatively, apart from the fact that I'm adding a dormer, then it's a fairly straightforward process. But if they are in fact saying, well, actually, I'd like to hire 3 more people.
But here's the thing, the way it's written, I'm not hearing the distinction that you're saying right here. You're saying it as if it doesn't necessarily trigger the major site plan review.
No, it does. But the answers are,
They're easier answers.
the answers are critical for understanding how much work is involved, is what I'd say. So if you don't have any intention of increasing the number of employees or the number of car parking spaces or increasing the impact on the neighborhood of the office function in this residential neighborhood being intensified, then it's pretty easy to demonstrate that. And so,
Right, but it does require, as what, the things we were looking at the other day, is that it does require bringing in a professional landscape designer and a professional traffic engineer and,
Right.
and all those things
Is it
for somebody who
possible-
wants to do
Is
that.
it possible that when this applicant comes before the zoning officer and the decision is made that it's a major because of this roof line change, that it was also possible to say X, Y, and Z items that are on the checklist are not appropriate and are not applicable and therefore are not submitted?
I would think if you want to go that way, we would write the language similar to the subdivision language,
Right.
which does give the DRB the authority to waive
to waive.
application requirements.
right,
I don't think the administrative officer
right.
should necessarily,
I feel
Have
that,
that
I like
choice.
that idea of giving it, not having it in the administrative officers, but giving the DRB discretion to waive particular requirements that aren't relevant for an applicant.
so that authority exists in the subdivision language. Similar language could be used in the site plan review process. Isn't there now? But there are some hazards to that as well.
And what
Yeah,
are
that makes me a
hazards?
little nervous.
Is that there could just become a regular practice
Of waiving the requirements.
The requirements.
Yeah,
Right.
I don't really like that.
Oh.
Even though I brought it up.
Right, I mean, so,
Why did we allow it in the subdivision language? Sorry.
It's built into the statute for subdivision.
right. And so that's the threshold, we
It
can't,
came with it.
we can't, yeah,
Yeah.
it's part of the
It
package.
can't be subdivided.
It's right,
But if
right,
it doesn't apply, then it's not gonna be a big deal. You know what I mean? Like,
which is part of the way I was approaching
Well, I
it.
think what your,
I don't
your
agree with
question
that.
is if you're putting a dormer, say, on a small business in a single, formerly single-family home, you're saying that it puts a financial burden on that business owner to then also have to go do like a landscape architect.
Right,
and a
like
whole
that
bunch
has
of other
nothing
things
to
that
do-
aren't- When they're
right.
not
Right.
planning on
but if
making
you're
those
not
changes.
changing
That's-
Then you could
any
use your
of those
original
things,
drawings
then you
anyway,
just
right.
have your existing condition plan and you're
Right.
gonna say,
Okay.
no change.
All right,
Right, so
Although
yes,
that-
so if you needed a permit, you may be lucky to have inherited, a border property that has been permitted before. And so there'll be an existing site plan. We could make the site plan available, or you would have a copy. And then if you're not making any changes, you're like, look, easy, I'm just gonna say, there's no change to the site plan.
Yeah,
I
I
am
guess-
proposing a
yeah.
new dormer, right?
I guess I understand the reasons for not softening the language, and I think
Right.
that makes a lot of sense. I guess it just on a, and, this is not a planning commission thing, but it makes me think like, we need to have some resources to help people navigate this stuff, because it can be a bit intimidating for small business
Yeah,
owners.
well, I
And
think-
and that's not, obviously our task here, but
But I think a lot of these regulations do spell out that you should come see the
Yes.
planning department and you should sit with Rod and Sue and Brian and
That's also
they
part
will
of your role.
explain,
Right.
right,
you know,
sure.
and also tell you what all exists now online in
Right.
terms of resources,
Right.
so forth. So that is an improvement.
What's that?
Yeah.
Can I didn't read this language the same way, and I realize I didn't participate in this discussion at the last
Right.
meeting. But I didn't read the language to say that it would be mandatory to do a landscaping review by a landscape architect if you're putting a dormer on your roof. I thought that language implied that if there's landscaping being done, a professional plan should be put before.
No, it's anything that triggers a major site review requires all that stuff, which has been my concern with it all
Right.
along.
Right.
That you
So
have to do it.
There's two elements in the changes table that are what's being discussed here. If you have the big table in front of you, it's
The newer
number
one?
52. No, they're in the ones we reviewed last time. So this is the,
Paragraph 14, drop C.
yeah. So this would add a sentence, applicants for major site plan approval must submit a landscape plan prepared by a licensed landscape architect or certified horticulturalist. And then there's a similar one in the lighting section.
Right.
That's number 62. Applicants for major site plan approval must submit a lighting plan.
There's another one, and there's another one that requires a traffic engineer review,
There's
right?
one for a traffic study, but that is not triggered
Right.
by the major site plan.
Right.
What is that
Right.
triggered by?
The level of development. right?
Yeah, the level,
Yeah.
the proposed
Oh, okay.
change,
Yeah.
right?
So it's lighting and landscape?
Yeah.
Lighting and landscaping, and then those architectural standard pieces also in the zoning districts would trigger on major site plan.
I mean, you could
And then
try
we
to
talked
fashion-
about
as well.
last week about a certified horticulturist.
Right, yeah, I remember that. You could try to fashion a narrow waiver, like if the project is under $10,000, that might alleviate what she's worried about without creating a sort of knee-jerk, let's just waive this anytime attitude.
Yeah,
My
I-
concern with the structural change to the foundation, roof, floor, or load-bearing walls, or
Or
exterior
exterior
walls,
walls.
however we do it, is that, to me, that gets into kind of building code stuff, and we
Generally
don't
don't
have
do
building
that.
codes. I mean, I know the roof line can change the design of a building and stuff, but right, like, it's just not an area that we've been at, and I wonder, an increase in a floor area of more than 2,000 square feet. Okay, so you put a dormer on, and now you've added square footage. If it's a small one,
Right.
you know, maybe you're just adding,
But
So
it's
I
more
did
than
look-
2,000 square feet, so.
But if it's, but if it's less than 2,000 square feet, then
It would still be a
right, if we take out the building code things and keep all the other things, all the other triggers, would that catch, is that what you're saying, would that catch?
Yeah.
Like the relevant ones and not,
and what's a structural change to the foundation if you go from like a field stone to like a poured
I mean, I'm thinking
foundation?
that's, you
You have
Lift
to
the
jack
building.
it
the
up.
building, take the foundation out, put a new foundation under it.
but that's not gonna impact the, like,
But it
if it's
doesn't
the
impact the
same
footprint.
size.
It may be the same size, and these are meant to trigger a level
Scrutiny.
of investment. This is a certain amount of work and investment that's being put into this building, extending its useful life. And it's a trigger point at which you would then want other aspects of the development brought up to the current regulations. It's not necessarily tied to the fact that you were already planning to do landscaping, and so you have to do, if you were gonna do landscaping, you would have to do it too.
if you're gonna take out that, if you're gonna take out your foundation and put in a new foundation, then it triggers the other one of that you can't be occupying the building. So, like, there's that, you have another, that would be gotten
Right.
from another side of it, where it's something,
I will say that I did look today at definitions of substantial renovation, and there is a tax code tie-in, so this language shows up, and apparently that's the tie-in because there is some sort of IRS.
Right.
So language along those lines is fairly
But you're required,
consistently used.
you're required to report it,
I think it's how you can deduct it.
how you can deduct it.
Yeah,
It's a yeah.
yeah.
So
That's a
something,
business expense.
I
Right.
can't remember, it might have been James made the suggestion, what about putting in like a kick out for something that would under these things qualify as major, but is priced under some number, I think it was giving the DRB, the option to then waive requirements if it's priced under some number.
Something that clearly triggers this just because it's odd, like you put a little bump out in the footprint for your grill or something. I mean, that would be a change in the footprint. And I guess theoretically it would trigger major site plan.
It's a big
But-
grill.
So,
Depending on the size of the grill, I think it's legitimate.
I mean, most major site plan stuff, I think, would not fall in the type of dormer
Right.
stuff that we're worried about.
Right.
You could tailor it. And I'm in favor of the major site plan because it's the only way to get out of compliance grandfathered stuff back in compliance all the time when you find
Yeah.
someone who can finally afford to, make
Fix
these
it.
changes.
Right.
You got these properties dumping water into Whetstone Brook and all this other stuff that needs fixing. So I do think it's a valuable thing from the standpoint of enforcement.
So I was wondering what people thought of James's suggestion of having like a DRB can waive some requirements if it's under some proposed budget.
What is the definition
But-
now of major? I mean, if there's a change to the roof or the exterior wall or something,
Two.
an addition, and does it include an addition of some size?
Yes, 2,000 square feet, which is pretty generous,
Well,
actually.
yeah,
It's
so
very
if you're
generous.
under 2,000 square feet, then you're a minor, right? Am I
Well,
right?
no, it could be.
Unless we take out all that language about the roof and the
Change
If you-
structural
the
stuff.
roof
Can I
line,
just pass that around?
outside walls.
See, I'm thinking of a certain situation where
Right.
pretty much everything was taken down but one wall. And that
Right.
did not go
Well,
to the DRB
could
for
we
site plan
say-
review.
Right.
But that would have been
And-
substantial improvement.
Yes.
Yeah.
And uninhabitable
would've-
while you're doing
It
it and all
definitely
those
was.
other
So that-
things. I mean, I think
that
if we,
wouldn't fall
Can we
through the cracks.
merge A and B together
which,
so that it's a structural change
A
to
and
the
B?
foundation?
it's on a page that we don't have.
Roof, floor, or exterior wall, and an increase in floor area by more than
See, I don't, I think you would create
I
a
don't
huge,
think-
Yeah.
a huge exemption there.
That's a big,
Yeah.
yeah, that's too big
that's
of a
too
hole.
much.
And I mean, there's substantial renovations that don't change floor area at all.
Right.
Right.
You know, you could have a change of use. with no cha- Well, I guess.
But
it
change
That
of
would
use is
trigger-
automatically.
Yeah, right.
Or completely replacing a facade or something. Yeah.
The only reason I bring this up, have a little kick out, is because that 2,000, I think Liz correctly notes that the 2,000 square feet / 50% of market value is obviously like huge project stuff. And I think it might be appropriate to get the dormers or the, minor footprint changes out of there. Or at least give the option.
Maybe projects under 1,000 square feet they have variance, or under a certain dollar amount, or,
I like dollar amounts because I think that defines the scope of the project better than size.
Except
It-
they're
it-
always, they're guesstimates.
They're-
They're not, you don't really know the true cost till you're done. So what they put on an
People are
application is
reluctant
just,
to
Right.
it's just
Best
an
estimate.
estimate.
We don't get very good quality data on that section of the application now. And so that it's probably important to restate this. Within very recent memory, it wasn't the repurposing of a family home. It was an existing commercial structure. And it changed from one use to another. And they literally preserved a rear wall and entirely rebuilt the building, including the roof, and repurposed it and gave it a new use right on everyone's nose. And because they preserved one wall, we had no opportunity to review. It never came through.
well, I think that the site plan, I mean,
So-
we have to have something. I think that this
Right.
is, I think we're all in agreement
So-
that we need to have a
so-
review process.
Yeah, and so the point of that is to illustrate actually how difficult it is or tricky to find the right threshold or the right trigger. And for some settings and some buildings, I'm sure it's gonna appear excessive, and in others it's gonna be, well, yeah, of course, so balancing all these different attributes is a really important thing for us to do here and to contemplate it, but so that
Oh, well, of course, yeah.
it's just a question for us of, as James pointed out, really trying to figure out how to bring non-conforming buildings closer to conformance over time, and then also address what are clearly strategies designed to avoid review, which happen probably more frequently than most people realize.
If we change from money to size, my suggestion would be that the waiver amount be like anything over 200 square feet, you can't waive.
Yeah, I think very small. I mean, I think literally banging a dormer
Yeah,
in so
into
that
a
you
residential home
so
is
that
gonna
you
be
can
small.
repurpose, make an attic into a workspace seems to me to be pretty low impact. But by the time you've
And enough room for the grill.
right,
Right, and you'd cover people doing their own work then, which I didn't think about with the money
Right.
either.
So
Right.
when you waive it from being a major project, it's still considered a minor, so then it would go to administrative. So there's
Right.
still a catch.
right. And so if you were to not be totally forthcoming with the information, seek a minor site plan approval from the zoning administrator, and then subsequently mow down 6 huge trees and bring in a pile of gravel and turn your backyard into a parking lot, then we've got a violation, right? And I think that's what we're also trying to
I like the idea of
Identify.
keeping it tight like, because I think it's important to have a major site plan review, but having some arena, and I'm fine with a small square footage thing, where the DRB has the capacity, and you still have to go to the DRB and say,
Right.
I'd like to request that this be waived, but it doesn't make it so that if the DRB ends up, you don't have to worry that the language is so soft.
Right.
So I'm okay with that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we need to protect, the abutters.
Right.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And I like the idea of using the IRS language because it's clearly been case law tested.
Yeah, well, I found language that was very, very close to that structural change to language in multiple places. It crops up in the lead standards, it crops up
Right.
in probably building code language, and crops up in zoning
Right.
language. And then I found some law case that made it look like the reason it was being cited back to was tax code law.
Right.
So
The
that's,
one kind of challenge we would have is that because we don't issue building
yeah.
certificates, we would have limited ability to actually enforce around that stuff. It just is a challenge for us in a different kind of a way. But, yeah.
That's
So-
true also
Okay.
about, like, if it's 2,000 square feet or 2,500 square feet, or, that's probably true as well there, right?
So would so how is this, can somebody restate it?
So what I think I'm
Notes.
hearing, why don't you let me restate it and
Yes,
see if I
please.
think I've heard what they're asking for. I think that the planning commission is requesting some provision for the DRB to waive application requirements for small, major projects.
Small, major.
Small major projects tied to some sort of a square footage perhaps, or dollar amount, although
Not
there was
dollar
less.
We like square footage.
We like square footage better.
dollar amount, stay away from.
Yeah,
But
'cause-
it's not, so
Dollar amount be fine.
the square footage has to be the square footage that is defined in your definition of substantial. Because you can't say like substantial is 2,000 or more, and if it's less than 500, it's waived, because what happens to between 500 and 2,000 square
Yeah.
feet? Right, it doesn't seem to me like a waiver, it seems like you need to redefine what you're putting here and make the threshold.
It's not a waiver of the review process, it's a waiver of application requirements.
Right.
So that you could,
Okay,
yes.
Not have to
Not have
prepare have a lighting plan by
Yeah,
a
so
certified
like
lighting.
in subdivision applications, there's frequently a requirement, say, for 2-foot contours. Someone will come in and say they're only going to be, doing any subdivision development in this portion and it's fairly level. They don't need to do, they don't need this 2-foot contours. They don't need a topographic survey. So that's the sort of thing that would get waived based on the site conditions. So I think if
okay, and they
we go
only have
back
the
to that,
capacity to waive it because it's specifically
they ha-
under that
The
square
applicant
footage.
has to demonstrate that it's not.
Not needed.
Not needed. So
Right.
I think we can maybe put our thinking caps on and come back around with some language
Okay.
Great, thank you.
that aligns to that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Alrighty. What's
So
next?
not to belabor this point, but I just want to make it clear, because you also serve as the chair of the DRB. This takes place, right now, the procedure is that the zoning administrator meets with the chair of the DRB and they kind of say, oh, this is just minor. This gets rid of that. This gives clear criteria as to what is minor, and so that would no longer happen.
Seems nice.
Just so you,
Yeah, they don't have
Just
to
so
meet so
you're-
much. It's really
to be
good.
clear. Yeah.
See less of each other.
Okay.
Well, that's just the type of guidance that the DRB was asking for when we wanted to rewrite the zoning.
Yep.
That was really the last 2 chairs ago's suggestion. I don't want to take a position on this since I'm on here.
Okay.
I think there are pluses and minuses to both methods. So.
Yeah, I agree, actually. I think there are. And
The
it's,
problem with the way it is every different chair will have different standards,
right.
and this is consistent. The nice thing about the way it is if you're in a floor with the administrator, it's smooth, it's quick,
Okay.
All right, so now it's the review of public comments, starting with handy number 77 and going all the way to 164.
So the way we had done it last time, I think, was we
Look a page at a time.
We just talked about the ones that people had questions or concerns about. Because everyone had read through it beforehand. Should we take the same approach?
I think we should.
No, I think we should read each one very slowly.
Do you want to speak to the floor area ratio?
Yeah, before we deal with the first page, 85, we had not made any recommendation
A couple of those.
on it. So Brandy did some great calculations based on data that we got from the assessors department. So 85 deals with the village center, the floor area maximum. The comment was that a one floor area maximum would limit some existing properties from the allowable 4 stories, for example, 911 Western Avenue. So 911 at Western Avenue is the Stockwell building. It's the big red building. It's actually very big, occupies
Is that the
most of
Asian
the.
gourmet one?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. There's no parking on that site.
Although there is land in the back.
Yeah, there could be.
That's why it has the low floor area ratio it has, because there is actually
That
more
one's a low
land.
one.
It's a very bizarre shaped parcel,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So it's sort of like
you
a little.
probably can't get to there
No,
from
you
the
can't.
front.
It's very clear.
Okay.
It's very clear that you can't.
So that one actually doesn't limit,
Right.
that's below the 1.8.
It's
Well, yeah,
0.6
okay.
something.
So Brandy, doing the calculations, we found that 0.25 is the average floor area ratio in the village center now. The 90th percentile is 0.44, and the maximum is under 1, it's 0.9. So we actually are allowing a little bit of growth if the footprint and, if you could make it work on the site. So we think 1 is reasonable. Okay.
What happens if you can get a parking easement, but the parking's not on your property?
That's
It's possible. We made
That's
provision,
what the
That's what they do.
statute
Yeah,
has,
they do.
Yes, it does.
and we've got language in there for shared and for off-site parking.
It's been an extremely problematic site, as you probably know from the DOB, various
Wherever that
times.
site.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Tom French's place is part of the whole
Yeah.
craziness. Right.
Shouldn't be the cafe.
Yeah.
Right.
And what about street parking? Does street parking factor in if it's unlimited the way it is out there?
Yes.
We have reduced the maximum amount of parking required, or the minimum amount of parking required by 20%, I
Yes.
think, in the village center. I think that's the same as what you.
Bless you.
Okay.
Okay. So that's 85. So we fixed that, right?
Yep. So our recommendation would be no change.
Can I have so 82, it says recommend adding that language to 221B, and I'm just not clear on what that language is.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I will add the language that's in your current zoning
Oh,
to this section, which clearly states that you cannot put a residential unit on the ground floor within 30 feet of the street. So it'll just be a sentence that gets stuck in there.
Okay.
so what you wouldn't have in the urban center is you wouldn't see a storefront converted into an apartment. But there are lots of buildings, the Hooker Dunham is a great example, where there is housing on the street level, it's just within 30 feet back, so.
Right.
And that'll probably go into the notes under the use table, I think is where I'm gonna stick it. I have to find a place to push it in there so it fits logically, but.
Yeah, 82.
82.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. So it's back to people spotting things of interest or concern.
Do we want
Anything else on this
to,
page?
anything else on number 1?
I have a question on 90. Recommended roof pitch for New England is 412. You often see 312 around here, which
Well-
is pushing it, but,
I think 412 is what's recommended for snow shedding
yeah, I know.
purposes. I don't,
Then you got a modular.
yes, they're not built to New England snow shedding standards.
Oh, not all modulars.
No.
What about modern houses with flat roofs?
I think you're just totally inappropriate and
I'm
non-conforming.
managing.
This is,
It could be cheaper. Yours comes with this really a delightful husband that gets up there and shovels it over.
and this
We
is
should
only
make that
in
a
West
provision.
Brattleboro Village, the village center. So this is tied into some other historic building standards. The residential neighborhood, for instance, doesn't have this standard.
Ah,
so you're up.
for
So you're-
free flow.
Okay, fine.
So Tom can breathe easy now.
Yes.
Never mind.
Okay, I'm gonna go to the next one, 91.
If you change your roof line,
Um, Is this for West B alone, or?
This is, yes, for West Brattleboro. We are in, this section is the West Brattleboro.
Okay, I'm good.
The village center
I'm
section.
good.
Yeah.
We're done with this page? I have a question on 100. Can you just say a little bit more about this one?
So there has been some effort to get some of the more intensive industrial activities out of the service center and bring in a little more housing. And then in the industrial district, make the more intensive industrial things easier and get some of the more commercial things out. So a little bit more of a distinction between what the service center and light industrial are intended for. So wood products is one of the things. So we do allow some light industrial uses in the service center, but it's primarily envisioned to be those that'll be more office-like in their impact than I think most wood products establishments are. Generally, they tend to have loud machinery, outside storage, that type of thing, just because of the size
So
and bulk.
we're keeping with the intent that you stated.
That is that's what's recommended, yes.
I'm just curious, like, what about a store that wanted to sell lumber? That would not be
That's
allowed?
not a wood products
That's not considered
establishment.
wood
That's
products.
we have lumber yard building supplies, and that is.
That's a different
So
thing.
you're
That's a
talking
different
about a sawmill.
This is a sawmill, some sort of facility like the kiln drying type of
It's-
activities.
Is there a
And
definition
it's-
of wood products establishment?
Yes, an establishment that manufactures wood products other than furniture, such as lumber, plywood, veneers, wood containers, wood flooring, wood trusses, and prefab wood buildings. Manufacturing may include sawing, planing, shaping, laminating, or assembling wood products starting from logs or lumber.
Okay, but not including furniture making or something
Not
artisanal
including.
like that.
So
Okay.
there's a substantial wood products business located on Putney Road. Is that still service center there?
It is service
It
center
is
there.
service center.
What do they do?
They make wood floors.
That place
become
behind the
non-conforming.
brand place.
Yeah. Vermont wood floor.
I mean, that's right near a wholesale plumbing place and stuff, right?
No.
Is that
No,
what
it's
I think
set
in the
back,
wrong
it's set
place?
back close to the railroad tracks.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
That's
off of Putney Road, kind of
Charming
behind.
property.
Yeah, no, there's a
Friendly's.
wholesale
There
plumbing
are
place back there too.
Other
But that-
fabricators there, like
The wholesale plumbing place is a book press that I know of. I don't think there's one.
No,
No, maybe I'm thinking something different.
there's no flooring over that way.
No, the flooring is basically behind Dunkin' Donuts.
Yeah.
That
yeah,
seems like a
exactly.
reasonable place to have a flooring
That was a kiln
place.
drying operation beforehand.
Yes. Yes, I think they use those structures
So that
for
used to
storage.
be industrial and now it's going to be service center? Or the service
No,
center
it's-
used to allow the
It's
industrial?
it's service center
Right.
now. or
No.
I
It's
don't,
commercial now and it's allowed.
I don't mind this suggestion of changing it to conditional use, but I don't know how others feel about it.
I agree. Is that
That
an agreement?
was agreeing, yes.
I guess
Very agreeable.
I guess
How do other people feel? I
I
mean,
don't have a strong feeling. I guess I don't see I don't see the risk other than it's muddying the purpose, I think, of the service center.
somewhat, yeah.
But it doesn't seem like it's like risky. It just seems like it muddies the purpose, maybe.
Is it bordering an industrial zone?
No.
This borders Route 9 and then it's immediately north of that is the Ford dealer, and then after that it becomes
Close
industrial.
proximity.
So it's bordering the river.
It's bordering.
Bordering the railroad tracks to the east.
Oh,
There's railroad tracks, and then there's a rural residential
Pesky
area
railroad
down there,
tracks.
so it's kind of right in this area.
How far is it from the
Possible to
rural?
change the map.
How far is it from rural
Yeah,
residential?
like if there was,
Oh,
It drops down, doesn't it?
there's a very significant grade change between the railroad
It's very
tracks
close.
and the area along the river. Probably 40, upwards of 40 or 50 feet.
Easy.
Easy, more like probably 70.
Yeah.
Right. So,
Yeah.
in other words, the conflict, that's not a conflict.
Yeah.
As far as we, I would
it's more
not.
about the service center.
It's more about a service center, yeah.
Of course, Service Center is one of the least aesthetically minded districts that we have.
Right.
I mean, I don't think anybody is really clamoring to save the service center or keep the character of the service center.
That would make a great T-shirt.
I think it could, you might not want it as a conditional use in residential, but
Yeah.
the conditional use in service center, I think it's
I think it's-
appropriate to be a little bit broader.
Well, I was just wondering about that, it seems that the service center is 2 parcels in, and that maybe the service center would be on the first parcel, and maybe industrial on the second. Because that's what exists.
And some of those parcels huge, huh? And some of them-
Yeah.
I like the idea of keeping it conditional.
I'd probably be more inclined towards allowing it to be conditional than getting into slicing. Partly because, there's a historic aspect to that current location, and that over time that may change. And if it were to change, I'd probably prefer to set up the expectations that it changes in a particular direction, which would be service center, rather than kind of split it.
I'm okay with it being conditional.
Yeah. How about you, Kathy?
I can get comfortable.
So what's the worst case scenario? I mean, if it's conditional, it's still gonna be sort of,
Gets an extra level of review.
Right.
yeah, so, yeah, that's fine.
Worst case scenario, the DRB screws up and lets something loud and obnoxious in the service center on Bunny Road.
And then you'd hear it over the diesel trucks, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm okay with that.
An auto recycling plant.
Okay, so is that all right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think all I wanted to do was weigh the impact of having a very large site become non-conforming, right?
Why does anyone care if it becomes non-conforming?
Expansion, I mean,
You can
Right.
expand a
For
non-conforming.
use.
it's something to consider.
It's a source of employment and income, and there's a political delicacy around those kind of things.
I know, which I'm not very good at. To me, the whole point is like we're planning, which would mean you would be planning for the future. So, I mean, it's
Right.
unfortunate that it's unconforming, but it's unconforming because you're planning for it to develop in a different way, so.
I think the conditional thing gets at that, it sort of sets an
Yeah.
expectation up that it's going to go in a particular direction, but,
And you were thinking about adding some standards for
conditionally.
Wood products
wood products
establishment.
establishments that perhaps will add some additional protection.
Yep. And it's a local industry of some significance, so.
So one of the recommendations, I don't have them with me, but because we allow wood products establishments as a conditional use in the rural district as well, but you may have read some articles in Putney where there were some issues on the edge of the village with people running wood chippers or splitters or and that
Really cool, highly mechanized log cutter splitter thingies that
Processor.
a processor, that
Yeah.
is to die for.
which can be noisy and impact the abutters. And so we were thinking we needed some special standards for wood products establishments, maybe some extra buffering requirements. Was it a property size thing? I think it was buffering.
Buffering.
And
So that's something you're
sound.
working on. Okay, cool.
Well, that would do the trick, I think.
Right.
Sounds good.
I don't believe this the activity that takes place at this site produces noise or odor particularly.
I think it's enclosed.
I think it's enclosed, and but it's a fairly large establishment. It's extensive.
So if the standards are written and this use meets it, then they're golden.
Yeah, I think to the extent that it's enclosed,
Right.
I think we'll be okay. I think most of those standards got at
Right.
stuff that was going to be
Open
occurring
air.
outside.
Yeah,
Outside.
they did get
By
out.
piles
open
of
air.
wood chips and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Shall we move on?
I had a question on 108. So this
Oh, I
this
did
was
too,
the
actually.
auto repair and service is conditional in neighborhood center.
Yes, we're back to that.
Sorry.
Still
This
good.
got a lot of airtime in front of the select board,
Uh-huh.
and I mean, this one's popular.
So we have two neighborhoods, three neighborhood centers, I think, right? Am I counting
We
right?
have two. We've got the
Two.
one on the lower end of
Right,
Putney
okay.
Road, and then the one on
That's
Canal
Village.
Street.
Right.
Oh, this is the alternative one that people suggested. It's not what is.
Yeah, but this is where they're going to be.
Right.
So we had designated one on the southern part of Putney Road, and then one just north of exit 1.
Yep.
Which will now be that entire section north of exit 1 because we got rid of the service
Yes.
center part of that, right? So
Right.
that whole thing is now a neighborhood center.
And
Yes.
I'm sorry to bring it up again, but my questions about it were like, well, some of these particularly, this one is not next to residential, but the southern one is right up against residential neighborhood. So my questions were like, if you're allowing auto repair, that can be loud and smelly.
So we
No.
do have some standards that kick in for those
I'm
auto
sorry.
uses, and at one point we had none of the auto uses in the neighborhood center. We didn't have the gas station. We didn't have
Right.
the auto repair. We had that discussion. We decided no, and then the gas station got back in because we had too many of them already existing in this area, so that we put those back in as a conditional use. The same argument has been raised about the auto repair and service facilities, that they do exist in this areas. And it is hard to say that if you've allowed the gas station.
I would argue that the way in which they're used and their footprint in the neighborhood are different in a neighborhood center. If you have a gas station, they're often accompanied by a store, and they are up. So part of the purpose of the neighborhood center is, in addition to vehicular traffic, I think it's also something that people very likely will be walking to. And if you have auto repair, that's driving to it, and it's also, I think, noisier. A gas station isn't noisy.
So repair is noisier than filling.
Because of the cursing of the mechanics, or
I have to say,
I feel like I'm walking a very careful line here, because I don't know if any of you are
Well,
mechanics or married to mechanics. I don't want to offend.
there are,
That's very sweet of you.
It's in a different zone, but like Haviland is in the neighborhood that I live in,
Right.
which is a small auto repair place, and it's awesome having a walkable, seriously, because
Yes.
that way you can drop your car off and walk back to your house
Or work.
and get your tires changed. I mean, it's actually really handy having a small auto repair place right nearby.
Right.
I find so. I mean, that's an interesting spot because it's not immediately next to any
Right.
neighbors. So, but I could imagine, if somebody, like there was an empty lot next to your house and somebody put in an auto repair place, that would kind of stink. So, not necessarily literally, but, but I just wanted to say though that like when I saw recommending this, I was thinking, yeah, that's a good thing because it's really convenient.
But I
But I also-
agree that
yeah.
there is a distinction between the two.
Most of them
but-
are buffered. The sound goes towards the street, not towards the back, towards the neighborhoods.
right.
Well,
So.
what if conditional use standards were created to buffer and
So there are
contain?
such standards.
Okay.
Let's
think-
Do tell.
Thank you.
They repair
So
old
in-
Volvos
In
only.
305B,
And Saabs.
we have standards for automobile repair and service. Basically, the service and repair activities have to be carried out within the enclosed building. They're going to be doing probably work and painting, there has to be a ventilation system. Vehicles can't be parked in the setback. Any outdoor storage of parts, materials, etc. has to meet with the storage requirements, and you can't have a salvage yard, so things can't stay there for more than 90 days. And all of the equipment, hoists and such, pits, all inside the building.
And for conditional use, you have noise standards,
And there are buffer,
70 decibels.
if it was going to be against residential property, the buffer requirements would kick in too. So, how do you feel about that?
So, James, you said for conditional use, there's noise standards.
70 decibels from the next parcel, is that how it works?
At the property
At the
line.
property line.
Property
Yeah,
line, yeah.
we got into this deep with the skate park, I remember. I think it kind of
Sorry.
warped my, no, it's okay, there were conflicting interpretations of that.
Yeah.
That I never completely reconciled in my head. But I remember, it's a pretty reasonable standard. I mean, 70 decibels is not very loud.
I think what you're talking about, though, about also, it's kind of related to what you were saying, Kathy, before about we're planning, or are we sort of figuring out how to write things for, what's there. And I think it's a good point, though, just about keeping things walkable and not auto-oriented where we want that.
That was my other thing,
Yeah.
is it at odds with the purpose statement of that section? Which, maybe it's not, because maybe if you're dropping your car off, then you're walking around.
I think there's a bit of a sort of socioeconomic, I have a problem with this for socioeconomic reasons, because the shops in the neighborhood centers are generally little guys.
Yes.
And the dealers have all the money to do all the provisions they want every 10 years, it seems like. And these little guys, I think, are, part of our small town identity. And we should be mindful of completely making everyone in the neighborhood center non-conforming. Because if you want to put up a shed to put your tires in, then you can't do it. It's pretty restrictive.
So you're in favor of making it a conditional use with the standards as set forth?
I am. My personal belief, I'd make it an allowed use, honestly. But I think I'm further in that direction than the rest of the board. And I think conditional use is fine.
Right, because then there can be some oversight.
Yeah.
Well, and conditional use takes a look at the character of the neighborhood, whereas as a permitted use, you're looking at the on-site circulation.
Right.
It's
a narrower
much
view.
narrower. Conditional uses kind of take into account the neighborhood.
How are you feeling about it, Kate?
Well, James is saying, kind of implied where I'm coming from. I'm coming from that I'm an outsider who's just coming into town and looking around at it. So I'm probably looking at it from the if I were, playing Sim City,
Yeah, which is a good
here's how
place
I
to
would
start.
do it. But I think I could get comfortable with conditional, especially when you mentioned the noise thing and that kind of thing. I think that would be. No, if I were a neighbor in that, in a neighborhood like that would make me feel much more comfortable. So.
And it's by definition during the day, and in winter they have to close the garage anyway to keep it warm. So that's 6 months a year that I think you'd be significantly quieter.
I'm okay. Thank you.
Okay then.
So, conditional?
Yes.
Yep.
I'm good.
Great.
All right. Thank you. Next page.
Sorry.
Did I wake you up?
Torture. Roland's gonna fix that in post.
Should we mark
Hi,
the
Roland.
time?
Anything between 10 and 115?
Well, 110, we were going to be receiving a recommendation from staff at tonight's meeting.
Yes.
Yeah, this is the one about
Darn, I
the
didn't print out the
mixed
copy.
use
That's fun. Okay.
and the number of buildings. So we did look at the size of
did.
buildings in the mixed use
And I have the
district.
calculations in the office, I can go
Well,
grab them.
I did write down here that there were 15 of them that were over
You're
the
right.
4,000 square feet.
Yes, that's
And there
right.
were
Yes.
About 9.
There were 5 that were between 4 and 6,
6.
Mhm.
I
Yep.
think.
Yeah.
So there's a few that are just very big. buildings that are,
They're
What
going to be
district is
adaptive.
this?
This is the mixed use district. So this takes into account the northern part of Canal Street. So out as you kind of the area in between the hospital and downtown, that area. It's kind of got the intersection of Union Hill,
There's
Frost.
large apartment buildings there.
There's like Daily Shoe that takes into account the SD Oregon buildings, so that accounts for
Right.
some of the large. Mixed use is also down along Frost Street a little bit, where the kiln, not the kiln, where the Sir Sosimo is, and Turning Point, and the Cultural Intrigue. So Cultural Intrigue is like a 14,000 square foot building. So
Okay,
those are some of the
so-
large ones.
So that's a lot, don't you think? 15?
Well, what's
It's
their
a very
actual?
small proportion of the total number of buildings, but it is, there is certainly a number of existing buildings, but that goes back to the idea that some of the land that we put in this zone was industrial property that we're planning for the future to go in a different direction, and so there are these buildings.
It's funny, I was looking through some things today as I was writing the Planning Commission report, and originally when we had the mixed-use district, it was a much bigger area. It was pretty much Elliott Street to Canal Street, kind of all the way over. And in the initial draft, it was actually a 6,000 square foot maximum footprint. And we all reacted like, oh, that's really large for this area that encompasses so much residential. And then we scaled back the area that would go into mixed use, but we didn't really ever revisit the maximum footprint. So now that it's kind of scaled back and we've pulled away from a lot of the residential neighborhood areas, it's.
Would this effectively forestall any further renovation of, like, the SD Oregon buildings unless they apply for PUD?
No, they have a PUD. Yeah, they have a PUD.
And we also
And-
have a waiver provision that allows for increases in footprint to existing buildings here, so I'm looking for my language. We allow
Sounds
for
like
a 25% increase in any existing buildings, so that does give some room for some of those things. So that would take care of some of those buildings there. That is how we were gonna deal with the grocery store that's in the
Right.
neighborhood center, things like
I
that.
had made a comment on a previous meeting, as a street that parallels Canal Street behind what used to be Jad's. It's basically a residential street, and it was in the mixed use before.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
out now.
That's
Brook
out,
Street.
okay. Just, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Brook Street, I think.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I'm fine going back up to 6,000 if that, is that what you were kind of implying or suggesting?
I think that at 6,000, you could probably still design buildings that would be compatible in character with the surrounding residential buildings. I think a lot over that, you start to lose that ability to
Yeah.
make the buildings fit into what is a lot of single-family homes around them.
And I think that the lot sizes are pretty small in this area, so
Yes.
unless a developer was going to assemble a couple of parcels together, a 6,000 wouldn't make it with the setbacks and
So
some of the other requirements.
other dimensional requirements or other requirements will be controlling before the 6,000 foot thing pops up too often.
So probably if you've got a property that's maybe half an acre, then maybe you can.
So,
Get
but
to
if
the
it's an existing building that's larger than that, does it become non-conforming?
It does become non-conforming, but we do have that waiver provision that would allow for some expansion of those buildings.
So, should we change it to 6?
So if you had a big lot, is it 6,000 per building on the whole lot?
So yes, it would be that the biggest building you could have would be 6,000 square feet, and we do allow for multiple buildings on lots. But then, like Sue was saying, there's lot coverage, there's the setbacks, so there's the floor area ratio. So you have all those other standards too that come in. And the lot coverage is going to be probably more of a limiting factor in some cases than the building footprint in this case.
What's an example of 6,000 square foot building?
in town.
We should have looked one up, because I have one in Montpelier, but I don't have one here.
It's a bit weird, but the Walgreens is 12,000 square feet, so half that. Which is a difficult thing. It's always harder to go down than it is to go up. in a
Yeah, I was
sense.
trying to like
But this is
multiply my house several
Right.
times,
Right.
it wasn't working.
Currently, it's 4. Are we discussing to make it 6, or are we happy with 4?
Isn't the Stockwell's building about 6,000?
Yeah, I was thinking that too.
What's that building?
The one that
Can
we just
we-
discussed before.
Can we go back to the actual public comment? Because I'm not clear what they're saying. And I want to be clear, like they're not actually asking for an increase, are they? I mean, what is it? You're saying that amount is at odds with the number of structures and uses currently located within the
They're
zone
implying
district.
that their concern expressed here is that there are a lot of buildings that are greater than 4,000 square feet. And so we would be affecting their expansion capability. So
Okay.
if it's a 5,000 square foot building, or if it's like Cultural Intrigue, which is 14,000, that they would not be able to expand. Brandy's saying, no, actually those non-conforming buildings, though they would be non-conforming, we are allowing a certain amount of expansion on to those.
So their point is moot.
Mostly moot.
Yeah, that it would affect the expansion capabilities.
If Cultural Intrigue did a one-time expansion that was 25%, and then 10 years down the road wanted to expand again.
They don't get another
25%,
25
You don't
on
get
their 125%
So-
footprint building.
Now, what about,
Right.
what about,
It's a one-sir.
but what about something that is currently, I mean, if we have, if there's something that's currently 3,500 square feet, and they want to, add 50%, they couldn't.
They could
If we
not.
stay at 4,000, but they could if we're at 6,000.
Yes.
Yes.
So, I don't think it's the ginormous ones or one that, that is really the factor here. It's about the expansion potential for the ones that are not bumping up against that 4,000, which, I mean, then we get to
Or
decide what do we
it's
actually want
buildings
there.
new. I mean, if you
Stockwell
had,
building.
Right, or building
if you
new.
had
Instead
a,
of judging it.
if you had a
I
building
think
completely replaced in
that
that
looks like
area,
6,000.
or, I don't
Mm-hmm.
know, there's not a lot of open space, but you
Relative
had
to,
somebody put a new
these
building
standard
Right.
in,
colonial
then that
style
would also
homes.
be, you'd be setting
Yeah.
that precedent for how big that building could be.
It seems like for a mixed-use building, though, let's say there is a vacant lot, and you want to put in a mixed-use building, and you want to have storefronts, and you want to
Nowhere's
have
a good
housing
food.
above it, 6,000 square feet seems like a pretty reasonable size for that, and 4,000 sounds pretty small, actually, if you're going to try to have a couple apartments above a storefront. I mean, it doesn't seem unreasonable. Like, 4,000 does sound a little small to me.
4,000 is the footprint. So,
Oh, okay.
yeah, so that's
Yeah.
key.
Not
Yeah.
square feet. okay.
Yeah,
not square
that's true,
feet.
that's a good point.
So 4,000 as a footprint is actually,
Okay,
for Brattleboro,
It's a sizable building.
it's a
That's a good
sizable
size,
building.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a good sized
Okay.
building.
okay.
Remember, you could stack it, four
You could have a couple
stories.
stories.
Okay.
If you were going to build a new building, you'd have it at least, and you want to sort of maximize the lot, you'd go 3 or 4 stories.
So
Put an elevator in.
The building in the Brattleboro Village Center that we were discussing there, was it 19?
Stockwell, the one with the,
That one, as I looked at the numbers, is about 2,500 square foot footprint, because I was looking at that today.
And that's pretty.
Oh, that is pretty
Okay,
good.
and that's,
I'm good with
and that's pretty big.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm not seeing any action on this. I feel like it's fine.
I
It
feel
seems like
it's,
there's some
Right.
With the
waivers that
one-time
make
25%
possibilities
increase,
occur
it
and
seems
it,
fine.
yeah.
Okay, I'm good with that, too.
Okay. are we
Now that I
okay with
understand
that?
what we're talking
so
about.
we're keeping it at 4,000?
So is that the consensus is keep it at 4,000?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, any other comments on this page?
Have you
And
heard
sorry,
of
just
a
to be-
tiny house?
I had a question.
Stay away from
Can
that
we,
one.
before we leave this one, can I just confirm that that comes with waiver stuff?
It does.
Okay, and you're okay with the waiver stuff? You don't need to go into that?
Yeah,
Does it
we like
include
the waiver.
waivers for new buildings?
So the waiver would not apply to a new building. You could only build a new
As
building
it
up to
should,
4,000
yeah.
square feet. And you would not then be able to come back around and get a 25%
Okay.
increase to that, because it has to be a pre-existing building.
I think that makes sense.
one that
Okay, that's good
exists.
actually. Okay,
Um,
great.
Okay, I have a question on 111. Um, Why can't we have a marina in the mixed use section? I guess I had a sort of why not for a few of these.
I do too. I was wondering why bars and auto repair can't be conditional here.
Mixed use.
Bars and auto repair in the mixed-use district.
Yes. I'm bullish on the auto repair, as we know.
So you're suggesting a bar with your auto repair?
That would be brilliant. Some childcare and some art on the wall.
There you go.
Wrap it all up in a pretty bow. I love it.
Why your oil is changed.
And then your oil changed at the same time.
Change your attitude while you're getting your oil changed?
Okay, so-
Yeah, okay.
Hey, when you
We're
get the bill,
talk-
you'll feel fine.
What we're talking about here are these little orange juices along
The river.
canal.
Canal and part of.
And that's exactly what we were trying to plan away from, right?
The auto-oriented things, yes,
Yeah.
and some of the warehouse storage-y stuff,
Yeah.
which is, I think, why Marina and Yacht Club is in that list, because for boat storage,
Right.
not because there's any water.
Right.
Right.
So I remember that we studied this quite carefully in our day. And that we were content with these places being non-conforming uses because we wanted to have a more residential character and build up the pressure to keep the commercial districts
In commercial.
in commercial.
And walkable and.
Yeah.
Well,
What about repair?
James's bar.
James's.
Jimmy's. Jimmy's,
That is by nature.
Not to be confused with the
One would hope.
one would hope.
You would be encouraging walkable.
Part of the
right?
reason I am bullish on the
Sportsman
auto
lounge
repair
in
is
here?
because it's sort of flagged itself as an issue that I think a lot of people have with this. And I wonder if it's worth
The fight.
the fight to keep auto repair out of there when there's really a very slim possibility of building anything new. And I still think it's a minor, a nasty thing. I don't think it's a bad thing. I think fueling stations are definitely not something you would want in the mixed use.
Yeah, actually, I would.
Likewise, warehouse
it's
storage.
funny where I would be coming from the position that fueling stations should be allowed in the service center and pretty seriously restricted everywhere else because of the nature of the use.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
And then an auto repair shop, I'm far less concerned about in terms of impact.
Yeah.
Because that's more of a mom and pop.
I agree.
Right.
I also think that bars should be allowed in mixed use. If you're having people living in, it's like restaurants and bars, and I don't understand why that
And I'm
would
only
be.
suggesting conditional use.
Yeah, no, I would
Okay, so
also.
conditional use for auto repair, service, and bars. What about these other items?
How do we define construction-related businesses?
It's basically contractor's yard.
Yeah, an office would just be an office.
You could just do, if you were just gonna have a contractor's office, you could get that in under.
Right.
the other
Okay.
service
So it's
uses.
really a yard.
It's really a yard for the storage.
That's kind of.
Equipment
What
and
about-
materials.
Which
Like at the
leads to backup
Whetstone.
beeping trucks that can affect the.
So, I mean, you could even have you could still have an outbuilding to store some stuff, right?
Well,
Yes.
that would be warehouse or storage, wouldn't it?
You could just have you could have a shed in the backyard,
What about like the Whetstone art place where there's like those bays and people, I'm forgetting the name of it.
on William Street.
Yeah.
Is that mixed use?
That is the mixed-use district,
Right.
and I think that building would be miscellaneous manufacturing
Yes.
because it's artisanal stuff.
activity.
And is that
And
permitted?
it's conditional.
In mixed
permitted?
use?
Don't recall.
I think if the yacht club is conditional, it should be conditioned on the fact that it's more than 3 miles away from water.
Yes, conditional.
Well, why couldn't that
Liz,
just be?
it's conditional.
Okay, warehouse
Club
or
in
storage?
Brattleboro, okay.
Warehouse or storage, including boats?
So the definition of marina or yacht club includes boat storage. So I suspect that's the reason that got put in there, because there isn't any waterfront in the mixed use.
Why do we want marina or yacht club?
I was just joking on,
Oh.
it's just nuts.
That was
I
just
don't know
something
what they're
that they
trying to
had
do.
asked.
Right,
to
so
be
I think,
Oh, yeah.
so,
I would understand it if it was by the water.
so auto repair and service bars are mixed use, but would be conditional use. But all the others just don't make that much sense, right?
Yeah.
That's what I.
Yeah.
This seems like a stupid question, but I assume that the marina or yacht club is allowed, at least as a conditional use in the water recreation zone?
It's permitted.
Permitted, yeah.
Okay.
Okey doke. Auto repair and service and bars?
Yep.
Are we all good with that?
Preferably all
Preferably
all
together.
together. with decent pizza. I think we're set.
Jimmy B.
Jimmy B.
Jimmy B.
Yeah, right.
I have a 115 question.
Okay. I did too.
All right, this was hold on, what was my question? Let me return to this. Hear my question if somebody else wanted to add something.
I had a question, I had written, what about well water, question mark?
For 115.
115?
Yes.
With regard to the composting facility?
Yes, I think
Yeah.
the staff was considering making
Oh, yeah, I wanted to know
recommendations,
about the
and
composting.
you were making recommendations based on trucking, odor impacts, and I also was wondering, like, what about well water?
Wellhead protection.
Yeah, runoff. Although I'm assuming there's like regulation on composting
The
facilities.
state would review for the impact of the composting facility with reference to what I just call it, wellhead
Protection.
head
Yeah,
protection.
they have to get it.
Watersheds.
Right.
Yeah.
What is the composting facility
State
like?
review.
How does that manifest itself?
There's, once you get into an industrial scale, it's similar in dimensions, area as the transfer station or the waste, as the solid waste center here on Old Ferry Road. It's pretty big, and you're talking about large numbers of truck trips coming in, delivering the stuff that's to be composted, and then it being pushed around in piles by loaders, and hopefully people who can't smell very well.
Shouldn't that be by the dump?
Right.
It shouldn't smell if they
And
do it
by
right.
that's an industrial.
Well, when it's
zone?
fresh, it does. I mean, when they're bringing the stuff in.
Inputs.
The input. That's right. The output should be beautiful, inviting, kind of chocolatey, and relatively free of odor.
Okay, so
Where can we put a composting
Should have a nice
facility?
birthday
in the
suit.
industrial zone.
Okay, what about a small composting facility? Because there are also small composting, think about like something like at the Intervale and
So
in
there
Burlington,
there's two levels of composting. There's one that's sort of the agricultural related one where it's the inputs are coming from the farm, and that goes in through agriculture, and so that it would be a possibility. The composting facility, as defined here, is the commercial variety where it would be trucking in material from
Elsewhere.
outside the loop.
I'm
of the
not
property.
comfortable with permitting composting as a
Industrial.
conditional use in the rural zone, because you already have the agricultural, and I think they probably maybe didn't realize that in this question.
I'm not sure though, because if we have farms and you're getting inputs from the farms, it seems to me like it would make sense to have access to a composting facility close to where the farms actually are, rather than bring it all like through town and to the industrial.
Yeah, but wasn't
Zones.
Brandy saying that there's agricultural?
But
related-
if it's not an on-site
So
farm,
yeah,
like if you have
But
that there's, if
what-
it was on the farm that it's coming from, then it would be.
what you're mostly going to get in these compost facilities is not farm generated waste, it's
Okay.
food waste.
No, and it may not
Okay.
necessarily be composted material that farmers, at that level of like industrial composting, I don't know that the farmers would necessarily be like purchasing that or something for
Yeah.
their
Or using-
farm. It's kind
Right.
of two different ways.
It's kind of
Okay.
got their own
Yes.
Or
methods of
recycling
handling
stream.
that.
Yeah.
So I'm
So-
not comfortable with composting, but these other things,
Yeah,
maybe.
sure, why not?
I've
But you did put finishing retreats, and I want to know what that
Oh,
is.
yeah, I did.
Because I perhaps need to go to one of those.
Maybe the whole commission could go.
Yeah, I think we need to have more. I think you and I probably get a lifelong discount on something. if they figured out how to make us do it right, that would be great advertising.
Yeah.
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 Whatever that stuff
Like a
is.
finishing reserve. Send all the people who need to.
Right.
Yeah,
Then I could be
right.
like, what's his face of the line that got whacked last week? Cecil or something. All right.
And what about these others? Okay, so we already said you were recommending putting the others. I'm good with that.
So the other ones are
Okay, 116 to 123.
I had a question about sewer-related facilities in number 119.
what is it?
We're recommending adding sewer-related facilities as a conditional use in the waterfront district.
Yes.
Why is that?
Because we reshaped the waterfront district, and if you were, I don't think your existing sewer facility is in the waterfront district as we have reshaped it, but if there needed to be additional sewerage facilities, they usually go by the water.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
The
so,
wastewater
That's how they
treatment
work.
plant.
That makes me want to cry. Okay.
yeah, there's not a lot to be done about
No,
it.
what you want
Right.
wastewater treatment facilities
Right by the water.
as opposed to
Not having them.
Yes, if it's a choice between not having one at all and having one by a river,
Having one is good.
Yeah, that's true.
It all eventually makes its way to the river, whether it gets
one
treated
way or
not.
another.
They should be encouraged.
Sewer, right. I am thinking of, household sewers, I guess we're not talking about that.
What number was that?
It's
119.
119.
119. So that's all good. All right.
Yeah.
Anybody else on this page, 116 through 123?
Oh, wait a minute, we should come back to 122, just to, because there was a note in there, as we discussed at our meeting. The recommendation, this came
Yes.
up at the meeting when the working group folks were there.
Sorry, what number?
122 regarding allowing for
Banks.
a credit union associated with an industrial use. We think the best solution is to allow for an ATM or a small bank branch
Branch.
office, otherwise known as the hut that
That's right.
the teller has to sit in,
Right.
as an accessory use, just like we allow for things like the mobile food units as an accessory use on commercial property, so that somebody could put one of those in on a commercial property.
That's a good solution.
How would you define a small bank?
I'm going to come up with some sort of square footage. I don't have a number readily available off the top of my head, but essentially something that, a teller could be based out of,
Right.
and not much more, or an ATM building.
I mean, did you ever go to Perkins in Chesterfield? There's the small bank branch that's been in there, or the high school had the
I mean,
Branch there.
my only suggestion here is that if you're talking about credit unions, the primary purpose there is also to provide low-interest loans to whoever works there. And for that, you need like a couple of rooms,
Right.
offices for people that are doing underwriting and meet with people.
Right. Yeah,
It's not just an ATM,
I agree, but I think that function is kind of fading a little bit.
That's also true.
So if you look at the financial district in Putney, which is globally recognized, it's comprised of a really dinky little People's United Bank that is brick, of course, in case the people want to get the money, and that's got to be way smaller than a 2-bedroom apartment. Right? And then there's right next door to it, which is how you get the financial district, is the River Valley Credit Union office. And that's one half of a relatively modest wooden building because they're much more trusting of their customers. Don't think they're going to dig in to get the money. And that would be no bigger than this room, right? And it, you get three tellers, you get a manager, you get an ATM drive-through window, you get the whole gig, and it's not a very big floor area. So
I also like the idea of if somebody actually wants to get a loan, they could go to the main office, which is not
Right.
on site at their business.
Right.
That there could be what we're talking about here is allowing these
Right.
in the industrial district as,
Right.
as a small accessory kind of thing. I think that's
And,
reasonable. And if somebody's really
right.
going to get their, wants to get a loan, they could go to the,
Or, you go on Fridays
Primary
because the
office.
person who writes loans is going to be there on Friday or whatever it is, right? I mean, it doesn't need to be huge. Or you could just do what everyone else doesn't
And
go
a
on your
small square
phone.
footage doesn't mean that there can't be
Right,
an office.
right, right.
Yeah.
Oh, look, we need to discuss this right.
We'll have language for that.
Jimmy B says, move on.
Okay, that's good. Because they're getting loans for new cars, James. So they don't have to go to the repair shop. Yeah.
And
Speed
enjoy a
bumps.
drink.
All right. Was there anything else on that page? I don't think so. 124 through 132?
I was just, 132, I was confused, and I probably should have gone back through the notes from last time, but was there some sort of weren't they recommending it to be lower because new LEDs or something make it lower and then this is higher? Am I just
Well,
mixing up two things?
There's sort
No.
of two things going on here. We
Okay.
did, in the parking section, we allowed the poles to go up from 20 to 25 feet.
Right.
So it is an inverse sort of thing. The higher the
inverse thing
poles,
happened.
the fewer the poles you need to have, the
Right.
bigger the area that's lit by them. However, I did, in doing some research for this, discover that many of the new LED streetlights are actually meant to be mounted at 20 feet. It was my perception driving around that the new LED streetlights seem to be lower, and they are, and that's got to be because of the intensity of those LEDs. It's not strong enough to put them at 25 or 30 feet.
Right.
And so they are meant to be a tighter focus of light on a smaller
more
area.
focused beam.
So I think that for consistency purposes, it probably does not hurt to move this up to 25 feet, which we did with the parking lot lights. I think you'll find that some of those newer LED streetlight fixtures will probably come in lower. Will come in at 20. Because that does seem to be, a number of them are manufactured to function at that height.
Well, but then by allowing it to be at 25 feet, are we creating
Someone who's installing these is going to install them
at the
At the
right-
required
as they
height.
are
Okay.
Right.
designed to be
Okay.
installed. So
Or everyone's going to be dark from the knees down, well, thighs down, which, depending on your point of view, could be a benefit.
That answered my question, and I'm okay with it. Thank you.
But to be confusing enough, all these light heights are measured in meters.
Yep.
When I
Just
was
the way
in
it is.
third grade, we were moving metrics, so apparently
We must be the same age.
They told me that.
Yeah.
No, they were saying when I was in grammar school.
There's a second grade and third grade in 73.
75.
My mother said they were teaching Esperanto. She learned Esperanto. My mother can still speak some Esperanto.
That's very useful. That's great. Okay.
I was taught Latin.
I was too.
My
Wow.
husband learned. They still teach that.
All right, any,
133 to 143. Anything in there? Is there a backlash against the LED light fixtures yet?
I hate those streetlights.
Yeah, I think they're horrible.
I like them.
I like the LED green lights.
Wow.
I love LEDs.
I think
No, I
that,
like LEDs, it's the streetlights.
Yeah,
I
they
think
need
the
warmer-
applications
warmer
where they
bulbs.
just replace the
Yeah.
Cobra lights with the LED streetlights are not working because there's not enough light. The new ones where they've actually put in, there's supposed to be more of them, those work.
Yeah.
If they put in enough of them, they work.
Right,
But you have to have like twice as many.
right. Okie doke. 144 through 153. Anybody? Okie dokie. Wow, we're making really good progress here. 154 through 158. Love that too. Okay. 159 to 159 and 160. Really got carried away with that public comment, didn't they?
So this is where we're coming up to the
You get the
PUD
merit points.
language, right?
Yeah, and then 162 to 164. Anything in there? What do you think?
Nope.
Uh-oh, so we're up to the PUD language now?
Well, those last couple were all sort of intertwined with that
Yes.
PUD
Do you want to
language.
step through that a little bit for us? Or are
Well-
you feeling the need to?
I don't know. It's really your guys' decision. We left it as an open policy question when I left.
We didn't talk about it
We
Friday.
didn't
or
talk
something.
about
Okay.
Friday. Well,
We could throw it out.
did we talk? We didn't talk
No.
on Friday because you weren't here,
You were tied up. yeah.
and I was fried, which certainly
Well-
helped.
You know, I think their concerns over PUD are unfounded.
Do we want to talk about the campus PUD?
This is interesting
Yeah.
language you have here at 160.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I tried to adjust that a little bit to give a little bit of flexibility, but yet keep it
I thought it was a great solution.
Yeah, I like it.
Right. I think so. Just we struggled with the campusy thing.
Whether or not it was even needed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Sort of
But
had we went back to a philosophical discussion of the issue.
Yeah. I mean, we talked a little bit about it after you left, and I came around to thinking that we do need a campus development because you do get lots more flexibility in the layout that you wouldn't.
Right.
I mean, I know that you can have, we are allowed to have multiple principal buildings on a lot, but there are some requirements there. I think PUD gives much more internal flexibility. So
Right.
I support keeping it, and I think this language
Just as that.
also
Just as it-
helps.
Right.
Okay.
So the scenario we dealt with, we played with for a little while was just to ditch the campus PUD because we couldn't imagine too many circumstances under which it could be utilized as a tool. And the whole origin of the PUD thing way back in, wait for it, I think 1960 or even before, was that it relieved applicants from the tight restrictions set up by setbacks and other dimensional standards so that you could more imaginatively and more efficiently develop a parcel of land. And so in the scenario that we thought through, the campus PUD could still be could still be a useful tool if you confronted a parcel of land that was, say, uneven, like bumpy, irregular in some way, had some kind of natural feature or some kind of topography that made it pretty challenging to lay things out in a systematic kind of grid pattern, like 2 buildings on the left of a driveway and 2 buildings on the right of a driveway, something like that, which under mixed, which could be, because you can have more than one principal structure on a parcel, you could still do that if it was a nice, regular, flat parcel like this. But once you do this, or some other kind of topographical manipulation that is, natural and that you're struggling with, you might end up wanting to cluster 2 buildings fairly close together on one contour, one kind of small area that you can flatten out, and then 2 closer together somewhere else, and then thus end up having conflicts with our requirements to have the buildings separated in some way. So we just figured it was theoretically kind of your last chance tool to get a meaningful development going on a reasonable sized parcel with more than say 2 structures of reasonable size. And that under those circumstances, it was probably something that we could encourage certain applicants to utilize because we would, in the end, get a more imaginative and better outcome in terms of the placement of the buildings vis-a-vis each other. But that's it.
In response to some of the concerns about being more restrictive with the PUDs than under the current system, I think on the other side of that, we have done a lot with the basic standards of those zoning districts. In most of those districts, the uses are expanding the range from what's allowed now. And the provisions that do allow for the multiple uses and the multiple principal buildings on a lot has done a lot to get rid of probably a lot of the need for the smaller PUDs. I think that you're probably only likely to see the larger projects coming through the PUD system now.
I think so. And I think that in some ways we've made the PUD tool kind of a little less likely because of the flexibility and standards implemented in the rest of the ordinance.
So the PUD became a catch-all because the zoning was so outdated.
Right. And the freedom of being able to actually zone at will inside the PUD is also the other really appealing feature of it, and that goes away. So.
Great. Any other comments on any of?
Thank you, Brandon.
All right, thank you,
Thank
Randy.
you.
Are we done?
I hope you have.
Well, we
No.
have
Oh my God.
Things to
one
do.
more item on the agenda, which is planning for the public hearing.
So what I want to ask you to do tonight, and I know this might be a little bit difficult but we would like to have the public hearings on August 31st, which was a date I'd sent around last month.
What day of the week is it?
It's a Monday. And then the second public hearing would be September 7th, which is our normal first meeting of the month for us. And they'd both be at...
Labor Day.
The following
No,
Monday.
it's not in Labor Day.
It's the, Monday is the
When
following, the following Monday.
Oh, Labor Day is...
There's your calendar right there.
Labor Day is
Seventh.
the 7th of
Shoot.
September, it looks like.
So that would not be our meeting. It would be September 9th. We've got to move that. When holiday falls on the Monday, we usually meet on the Wednesday.
Following.
So it would be September 9th would be the public hearing. Good catch, Liz.
Yeah, that was excellent. Whoever did that, whoever did the catching.
So what are you asking us to do?
So we'd like to set those dates because
You
there are
calling
warning
up?
periods for that.
For 6
And-
PM on the 31st?
Yep, and September 9th. And, no, Brandy couldn't do them.
I will be in Berlin on the 9th, but
But what we need is some sort of vote to direct Brandy to create a draft for public hearing that takes into our these past
reflects
two.
all of this.
Seconded.
And then I will get them to you, maybe we'll probably hand deliver once Brandy has it done, and then I'll hand deliver it to you so you have it in advance. But it'll be the public hearing draft.
Okay, are we ready to vote on that motion? We'll have planning hearings on August 31st and September 9th.
Can I just chime in here?
No. Oh, yes, September 9th. Sorry.
On the 31st, I think in the month of August, we're splitting into 2 DRB hearings because we've got such a full schedule.
Yep,
And I think the second one's on the 31st.
it's not. We
Okay.
saved the date first, I told
Never
her.
mind. Sorry. I didn't do a good job taking it down.
Yeah, we got that right. We just forgot about Labor Day.
He was
Okay.
gonna try to move it, so.
Right.
Or meet in a different room, but then I had said that you two were.
Were you
on the
feeling
planning
that you wanted to
commission.
be here for both, or?
All right,
sort of
I
orders?
can do the 31st,
First?
but I can't do the 9th. I may look bedraggled on the 31st, but I will be here.
It's okay.
I thought that was a no. I thought you had already said.
I'm
we
not
need
100%
Randy
sure that I will
on
be
the
here on the
9th?
31st. I will let you know.
Okay,
I get home on the 30th.
I can do both.
so you can be here on the 31st. We need a good showing. We're gonna sit all official.
Yeah, we're going to do the important thing
Yeah.
again.
Well, it means
So if
I
you can-
can't move my daughter to Brooklyn, but I think that's okay.
On the
Isabel.
31st.
Yeah.
September 9th?
September 9th.
Okay.
Okay, shall we vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And the last one, and I apologize again, but with the quick turnaround on the meetings, this just got finished up today. We need to, when we warn the hearings, we need to provide a report. What I did in the first, so it provides a brief explanation, which basically says we've created a unified development bylaw. We're substantially revising and combining the existing zoning and subdivision and all that. The next part, which begins under 1 and goes on for pretty much 4 pages, I basically took Brandy's initial memo, technical review, where she said, here's your town plan goal, here's your town plan policy, and here's what we can do. And I changed the tense and said what we did. So that explains how we conform to our town plan goals and policies. And then there's two other questions, questions 2 and 3, that talk about how it meets the future land use and densities of the municipal plan, and any specific proposals for planned community facilities, which if you read the newspaper or watch TV, obviously we're planning new police and fire facilities. I list the districts that those are allowed in, and that's consistent with kind of keeping growth where we have existing infrastructures.
Did we, the riparian boundary, did we change that to 50? Look at the last.
We did, yes, that's a good one, we did. Yep.
Skimmer,
I know.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Okay, so this is great because it's a very good reminder for the commission to go back to the town plan and remind ourselves and the select board and anyone else who comes to public hearing that that's our purpose.
Yeah, go back to the technical review that Brandy did because it was very thorough and we actually hit a lot of it, so.
Yep.
Anything
Actually,
else we need to do?
can I get a motion on this?
Oh, yes, may I have a motion? Second?
As amended?
Who's going to send
Yeah.
it? Second.
Second,
What's the motion to do?
To approve it.
Approving
approve this
these
as
With it-
our
with an
report.
amendment.
You've so carefully scanned for us.
You okay? Oh. Oh,
Table.
you
I've
broke
already
it.
whacked it back once tonight, so.
You broke it. I can't believe that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
That was our favorite one too.
I don't have a little plastic wood strip over here.
Kathy must have said that last time.
So can I ask, how do these public hearings go down?
Whoa.
Should we adjourn the
Depending.
meeting?
Yes, let's
We
do
may,
Let's adjourn our meeting first.
oh,
Move to adjourn.
James moves to adjourn. Who wants a second?
Second,
I would stay here all night.
aye.
Aye.
All right.